Now we have a very exciting panel discussion up next. And this panel discussion is about driving change. We live in a world that's changing so rapidly. You know, there's always something new, always something changing, and we're shifting focus. So we have to be ready to adapt, ready to focus, and be fresh with innovation to keep up. So this next panel of people, I'm going to introduce first the moderator and then each panelist, and I'm going to ask them all to come up one by one. So the moderator is Manjula Selvarajah. Manjula is a national technology columnist to CBC Radio's 20-plus radio stations across the country and a guest host for CBC's local and national radio shows. So Manjula, if you would like to come up to the stage, please. Have a seat. All right, so the first panelist up is, and I hope I say this name correctly, Zavosh Zabolian of Foresight, Canada. So Zavosh, great, thank you. Nice to meet you. So Zavosh is a seasoned entrepreneur with over 15 years of experience in technology, investment management, and startup acceleration. The next panelist is Faizan Siddiqui of Monetize More. Faizan. Thank you. So Faizan has 2 decades of experience. He specializes in scaling greenfield and pre-existing operations, driving growth and turnaround opportunities. Welcome. Thank you. Next, we have Gerard Kalajian of New Horizons Media, Inc. Is Gerard? Oh, here you go, Gerard. So Gerard is the founder and managing director of New Horizons Media, Inc., a multicultural social enterprise for creative services, storytelling, and newcomer marketing. Oh, Gerard, I'd like to talk to you after. And then we have Trevor McPherson, President and Chief Executive Officer, Mississauga Board of Trade. Trevor assumed the role of President and CEO of the Mississauga Board of Trade in August 2021. And prior to joining the Mississauga Board of Trade, Trevor was with the Ontario Chamber of Commerce for 15 years, most recently serving as its Vice President of Member Services. Welcome, Trevor. And there we have our panelists and our moderators, so I'll leave it up to you to kick off the chat.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, wonderful. Everyone, it's so lovely to have you here. Can I just get a sense of how many people in here already have a business of their own or are contemplating entrepreneurship? Put up your hands. Okay, quite a few. I see a huge smattering of people over there. Fantastic. Good to hear it. So I'm just really delighted to be here. I think that we've got such a lovely panel here, breadth of experience. I've got some tough questions. Are you guys ready for this? No. Well, you're going to get the questions anyway. So having said that, Trevor, okay, I'll start with you. So Mississauga's home to over 15,000 businesses, right? Actually, you know what? Over that, actually, before I start with that, maybe what I should do is get everyone here to kind of say a little bit about themselves. So Trevor, I'll start with you, and then we can go back there. Just give me a sense of, who you are, what your organization does, very briefly.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much, and it's an honor to be on the panel today. So the Mississauga Board of Trade, we're a multi-sector, broad-based chamber of commerce, basically. Board of Trade, Chamber of Commerce, essentially the same thing, just has different roots. So we represent the interests of business. The core of our work is advocacy, ensuring that public policy matches up with the unique needs of businesses and the various sectors that our members represent at Queen's Park, at Parliament Hill. at City Council. So that's sort of the core of what we do. However, we do have a number of programs that serve the diverse makeup of our membership. So if you attend, for example, a monthly Good Morning Mississauga networking event, you'll see many small and medium-sized businesses looking to network and establish new partnerships, etc. It's really that social feel. We have more practical supports in terms of workshops that address various things like labor law, or how do I think about succession planning in my business. So a lot of activity in that regard, and many through partnerships. So we work with diverse communities through the many partnerships we have with settlement organizations like Costi and others. We work with incubators like Sheridan's Edge or Idea Mississauga that are doing great work. So it's not our role to try and replicate what they're doing. It's really to ensure that we are at the table and playing a role there, and also that we are representative of the business community that we serve. So we can get into a little bit of that later. Prior to this, I was at the Ontario Chamber. Thank you.
No, that's wonderful. You were saying that you were with the Ontario Chamber prior to this.
That's right.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So we'll get into that a little bit later. Thank you.
Thanks. Good morning, everybody. It's almost noon, but hope everybody enjoyed the conference so far. Thanks to Hamada and Tamina for organizing such inclusive and wonderful event. I think everything starts here in rooms like these. So my name is Zavos, or Zav. I've mentored over 200-300 immigrant founders over the past several years. I have also been a founder myself and transitioned to the venture side. So now with my work with different organizations, including Foresight Canada, CSA, we do a lot of we offer programs that sometimes come with funding. We help a lot of entrepreneurs understand how to be ready to have the first conversation with investors, investment readiness programs. And and I enjoy meeting founders and talking to them and supporting their growth. So I'll keep
You're
it
at the
short.
right place. You're at the right place. Thank you. I just want to say we're already hearing a couple of things that are really important themes. Succession planning, which even if you're a new entrepreneur, you've got to think about, right? Do you have something that, as I'm sure you mentioned, that I think is really important is, do you have the kind of business that people want to invest in? So how do you become investment friendly? Already hearing some great ideas here. Faizan?
Thanks. Hello, everyone. I'm an accidental founder from some years ago, and now I moonlight as a mentor for the most part. I'm an early stage seed investor, and I have invested across the board in about 15 markets with active investments. And I typically provide what is called failure capital. People don't like to talk about it, but dollars provided to you to fail. Fail fast so that when you go around doing it the next time, you stand a better chance. And I've sort of made it my mantra. That's what I've invested in. And I have 2 exits now so far, one listing on the London Stock Exchange for a startup, and hopefully trying to replicate it as we go along. And I keep on going back to being an entrepreneur and not being an entrepreneur, and an entrepreneur and not being an entrepreneur. And I'm on my journey of now working full-time in the corporate world, but continuing with my investments because I sort of find the drive to learn new things and then go back. I also serve on Google's Global Accelerator as a mentor, and I've served for the last 8 years. Thank you.
It's funny. It reminds me of the line from The Godfather, Al Pacino, I believe. He says, no matter how much I try to get out, they pull me back in. Entrepreneurship is that to you. And by the way, very quickly, how does one become an accidental founder? What is your story there?
You help other founders. So my accidental entrepreneurship is that I was not the founder. Somebody else came up with the idea. I got into the business and accidentally ended up owning half of the equity, when we went.
Interesting. So that's also another opportunity for people right there. You don't have to start your own thing. You can go and be part of the founding team of another organization. That's fantastic. By the way, you need to write a book titled The Accidental Founder. I already see a movie. It's all set. It's not going to be Ryan Gosling, but I think it's going to be a fantastic movie.
Oh, thanks for that. I write a newsletter, but we'll talk about that.
What's your newsletter titled?
It's called Faster. It's essentially to have faster outcomes in life.
Interesting. Faster. Okay. Okay, Gerard.
So I guess I'm another accidental founder as well, so I can start using this term. So in 1 month and 2 days, I'll complete 14 years in Canada, so I'm an immigrant.
Congratulations.
And thank you. Speaking briefly about my work, New Horizons Media, which I accidentally founded, does content creation and newcomer marketing. We work mainly with small businesses and not-for-profits, with a sweet spot for not-for-profits that work with immigrants to help them get their message out and tell their stories through content creation in different formats. And as part of our work, we also create our own content, which is the New Canadians TV Network, Canada's only TV program dedicated for newcomers, broadcasting coast to coast and helping newcomers and would-be immigrants build their success stories in Canada.
Interesting. Something that you just said about marketing is very interesting, is that, so I host this podcast called Solve for X, and we were just discussing at the Solve for X podcast how Canadian startups are not great at sales and marketing compared to American startups. For some reason, we are very much about let's do a great product, let's do a great service, but not broadcast that. And we need to get better, because when you're ready to scale up, it's actually sales and marketing that comes in to help you to sell to bigger companies and bigger businesses. So I think that's really a kind of a powerful thought. So Trevor, I'm going to start off with you. I mean, you said that Mississauga's home to over 15,000 businesses. Over half of the city's population are foreign-born. So it's clear to me that diversity is at the core of this city. How do you see this kind of interesting demographic mix driving opportunity for entrepreneurship in the city?
Yeah, and I think you've got the right angle here, because to me, it's not solely about supporting entrepreneurs in their journey. It's about what they can offer to our economy, to our businesses, where really it's a business advantage we have here in Mississauga, and we need to really tap that much more effectively. So, we do that through our partnerships, through engagement. I was speaking just to someone in the hallway about a program that we had that wasn't specific to BIPOC, to the community, but it was really a women's leadership mastermind series that included a number of diverse business owners that went through that program. It's something that we partnered with TD Bank on, and we're looking to do more. I think the way really to go about it is ensure that we're bringing people into our tents, and we do that, even at our board level. I very much do believe in the I need to see me to be me type of attitude. So, I look at an example, and one of our board members is Ryan O'Neill Knight, who started the Afro-Caribbean Business Council, recently on Dragon's Den as well, and just continuing to kind of nurture those relationships, and I see it more as, we're a willing partner. There are many groups out there, as we've talked about, doing the good work of assisting startups. We're a very broad organization. I think where we can provide value is bringing our startup scale-up members in contact with our larger members, not only for mentorship, but for things, very practical things like procurement opportunities. And I think maybe we'll talk about that.
This is huge, by the way. This is really huge, because in other countries, government agencies, big businesses, banks buy the products of a lot of small and medium sized businesses. Doesn't happen in Canada as much. I mean, I will argue with anyone on this, right? It doesn't happen in Canada as much, and I'm really glad to hear that this is changing, that you're trying to make this change by bringing people together in the room.
It doesn't happen in Canada as much, and it's not just, muted myself. It's not just in relation to diverse business owners. It's the small and medium-sized business community. I've talked to so many companies that say that their first clients were not in Canada.
And I have too, yeah. It's a big thing. They find it across the border or overseas.
Right. So we're trying to work with, I think firms are starting to come around to that. One thing I think that we need to be cognizant of is this push against DEI, and what DEI means and what it doesn't mean. it shouldn't be about checking a box ever. It's about, what tremendous assets we have here in terms of our human capital and our companies. If we're looking to have a more productive society and we're comparing Canada to other countries, well, we have people from many other countries here that can provide some best practices so that what you're saying about sort of the Canadian approach, hopefully we can inject a little bit of
Shift that a little.
yeah, something in there.
Faizan, I'm going to bring you in here because you have this experience working across various parts of the world, particularly in emerging economies. So you have this perspective also because of your exits on what makes for a successful startup. What are the challenges or gaps that you see that exist in Canada's startup ecosystem for immigrant or BIPOC founders?
So I think there is a lot of good discussion and conversation around having access to capital. But a lot of people do not know how to access the capital. So the capital does exist, and I continue to feel that networks invest within familiar networks. So if I'm an investor and I know people in a particular network, and it does not have to have, a BIPOC or a DEI vocation, it could be anything, I'm more inclined towards investing into that network. We don't have chains of networks that invest across networks. So I think responsibility lies with angel investors and others to also better market themselves that, hey, we are available, we have access, we have capital. If you need access to this capital, reach out to us. People feel and people determine exclusion on their own. They look at a particular network, they look at their investment criteria, and they're like, you know what, we shouldn't go after these guys because they've typically not invested in my kind of business, my line of business, my service type, so I'll probably refrain from asking the question. And there are tons of these missed opportunities that I continue to see here. And when you make the connection, either through events like this or other networking opportunities, people are like, oh, I really never thought about this, that I had an opportunity to go after this particular investment club or this investment network or this angel group or VCs.
So that's interesting. So you're saying that founders in some way are self-selecting, looking at something and saying, I don't think they invest in ideas like this or people like me, and taking themselves off the table. You're saying instead, go for it, even if it's massive or big or difficult. What's the worst that could happen to no? Yeah,
that's it. And I think, the question always asked is, what are investors doing for the founders? What is the community doing for the founders? And I tend to agree, right? The founders also need to go around and ask and, make themselves heard, brand themselves better, go out and seek this capital. I don't think there is inavailability of capital. There's definitely a mismatch and a lack of asking those questions. Hey, can I get this capital? Can I get access to it?
I know people are going to have questions for you on this because I do think that people think investors and venture capital firms also have to do more, but we'll come back to that.
Sure.
Maybe I'll get someone to pose that question to you. So Gerard, through your work with New Canadian TV, you've highlighted the journeys of entrepreneurs. You've spoken, you've networked with many immigrant entrepreneurs. Through those stories, I mean, you've heard some of the things that have been mentioned here by Faizan. What are some of the unique challenges that you hear that immigrant founders are facing in Canada?
There are a number of challenges, obviously, and the first one, the fact that immigrant entrepreneurs have to navigate the regular challenges most immigrants face in terms of settling, securing kind of their family, putting bread on the table and stuff. But on top of everything else that is associated with starting or managing their business. Another challenge is obviously understanding the Canadian landscape, the business landscape, I mean, the legalities, the taxation, and the networks. I know Faizan touched on it. Because there's a lot of focus in terms of support on helping immigrant entrepreneurs start a business. But I feel it's the easiest part. You can teach someone the basics of starting a business in a day, but then there's the challenge comes afterwards, where
the growing part.
The growing part, getting your beyond your first or second client, and accessing capital as well, funding in terms of. There is funding, yes, of course, but in many cases it's not easy, or the bar is very high, or there's lots of bureaucracy, paperwork that immigrant entrepreneurs, unfortunately, they don't have the time or the knowledge or to go through it. and to access that funding and accessing also bids or tenders and all these things.
So we're not just talking about actually sort of cultural understandings of how to work the room or how to work the network. You're saying there's also bureaucracy.
There is bureaucracy, yes. It's not easy if you. I know there are specific kind of programs to help, but myself, we applied in 2019 for a request for proposals from the government. It takes lots of time and lots of energy. We don't, as entrepreneurs, as small businesses, we don't have those resources, right? And it takes a lot of, in our case, it took us 6 weeks to prepare 3 requests for proposals and lots of few $1,000s. But then no small business got the funding because it's difficult. It's difficult, and there's also mixed messaging where small businesses were encouraged to apply, but then none of them got anything, which is weird. Like it drains your funding, it drains your energy, and it takes you off track from what you're doing as well. And in many cases, a recent example I will give is the Digital Mainstream grant that they started during COVID, where there was funding available to help businesses transform digitally, but the bar is so high where businesses had to make minimum $500,000 to get access for $15,000 of funding, which is ridiculous in my opinion. There has to be some, yes, there is support for starting a business, but there has also to be dedicated or targeted support for the first 2 to 3 years of helping new businesses to walk that journey where they can reach to a safer space, after which they can go on their own much easily.
Tamina, because I see you there, I think you just heard that. That should be a clip that needs to go to someone. I think that's it's so interesting to hear a founder. 6 weeks, come on, okay. Okay, I'm gonna just shift sort of angles a little bit here and talk about impact-driven investment. Actually, before we go into that question that I have for you, Zavash, on impact-driven investment, can you explain what it is very briefly, what it is?
Yes, sure. So impact investment is a very broad umbrella term, but essentially in the past, investors would look at providing capital, and they would measure the financial gains of the companies that they invest in. And over the past decade plus, I think we're seeing the trends change, where now it's actually critical to look at measuring social as well as environmental gains, and it's not just financial. So that should sum it up.
So you have to be able to speak to things like sustainability or
not just speak to it, you have to actually show that your business has either an embedded model or maybe not so much embedded, and I can explain that, but you actually care about, as you want to grow your business, also helping with bringing positive change into whichever area, whether it's social, by hiring people that are more diverse, or providing accessibility, or getting into areas where it supports the environment. So there's so many ways you can think of impact, and it doesn't just have to be one of those terms to throw into a pitch deck, but you have to actually think it through and care about incorporating it in your business model. So
I just sometimes wonder if this is all sort of fluff. Right? I mean, how much of it is fluff? Because I'm just trying to imagine an investor is looking to get 10x in 5 years, probably even more, 3 years, right?
Yeah.
50x in 3 years. I'm going to get you to weigh into, like, how much of this is, how they really looking to see what your impact on climate will be or impact on DEI will be?
For sure. And I agreed to do this because I like to talk candidly, and I want to make sure people here walk away with some kind of value at the end of the day, and not just talk in generalities. So let's, if you don't mind, I'm going to address some of the things that were mentioned as well. Yes, there are companies out there that greenwash. There are companies out there that they follow trends. So now you see AI is picking up, whole bunch of companies start to put it into their presentations, talk about AI. And if you dig deeper and ask them, so why AI? Why do you need AI? Does it address the problem that you're trying to solve? And that's how you actually, during the due diligence, this is where a lot of smart investors have to actually spend time, look at what the company says they do versus what it actually is doing. And that's how you can pick really good quality founders, quality companies to work with. And yes, there's always going to be people out there that try and use marketing to just sell a product or a service. But I wanted to bring this into addressing a few things that we heard, because I learned entrepreneurship based on the American school of entrepreneurship, which is very different than the Canadian entrepreneurship. We have some of the best entrepreneurs coming out of Canada, but it's different because, you know, you talk about accidental entrepreneurship. Elon Musk, I don't think many people know, he is not the founder of Tesla. He actually was the investor in Tesla. You can look it up, it's on Google. The two gentlemen who started Tesla, he wrote him a check for $6 million, $6.5 million. Now everybody thinks he's the founder of Tesla. So there's so many ways to go about what you're passionate about and how you can leverage either your dollars, your skills, social capital to get there. But I just want to, by show of hand, how many people here watch sports or played sports growing up? Okay, so mostly guys, but there's a lot of people. We've all, you know, watched sports. And this is related to the issues that you raised, which is very real. I've faced those too when I was operating my company here, and it's super frustrating. But we're not taught here that entrepreneurship is a sport. Americans are taught that entrepreneurship is a sport. You got to put your feelings aside. You get better at learning the game, and you play better, and you pick the
It's
teams
like a lesson about failure too.
and you play to win.
Yeah.
Some people play to have fun.
And
sure.
this is what, I mean, it's funny because, Faizan, you were talking about that importance of almost learning that part of your journey is failing, right? So I'm just going to bring it back to talking about impact-driven investment, since you've said this is something that people are focused on. And both of you here are investors and mentors to startup firms. How can immigrants and BIPOC founders leverage these sort of trends to attract funding? We know that there are investors out there that are looking for this kind of, not just financial impact, other impact. I don't know if we want to start with you and come back to you, Savash.
So I think, look, dialing in on trends is great, but you have to dial in with purpose. So if we're talking about AI or ESG goals or things of that nature, investors are pretty sharp now, right? They understand that some of these are just slide decks that mean nothing. So make sure you have a value proposition at the end of this. So if you're somebody who has operated in that space, you have measurable experience from another market that translates well into the one that you're now present in, make sure that you demonstrate that. A lot of people don't bring their experiences. They're like, oh, it's not relevant. I'm new here. I don't know how people will react. And a lot of that is lost in translation. Mm-hmm. So what you can do to translate and to catch up on these trends, if you've come from a market that is already ahead, because in a lot of streams, Canada's far behind, whether we like it or not, right? So immigrants who come here have a natural advantage. I could name 20 things that they have a natural advantage in if they've already operated in those spaces.
Name two.
So the number one thing is banking and payments. We're so far behind, even today, that it's almost embarrassing. The second would be, I want to give a relevant example to the audience here. The second would be telecommunications, right? We have 4 major players who continue to control the market, mm-hmm. and they buy up everything that makes sense. So if you are someone, or if you have some expertise in that space, you're already ahead of the competition, right?
This is such a powerful piece of advice. So if you are in a space where they're advanced in another economy and you've come here, use that expertise, and maybe even go into that space. I think that's really powerful advice. And I will say, having dealt with a telecom company to change a couple of lines this week, I might be actually on board. I don't like to say that, but I might actually be on board.
I've got to check if my self-service is still working.
Yes, yeah, that's right. They're going to cut you off. And I think banking is another one that we could see some innovation into. I'll come back to you, to you, Savash, with the same question. What are some trends that you see out there that immigrant and BIPOC founders can leverage in this sort of new impact-driven investment that you think that they can leverage to attract funding and everything else?
100%. Again, I look at this differently. I think immigrants have a ton of advantage, and I know the value of why it's important to have inclusivity and DEI types of programs, but I also think all founders should be treated as great founders. They need to learn how to be great founders, and how do you become a great founder is build traction. A lot of founders try and go get investment before they had their first customers, and then they feel frustrated that, oh, how come there are these thresholds to get funded before I could use the funding to make my company? It's a chicken and egg problem. But if you just look at doing whatever you can to make your company successful, solve a real problem, and this is one of those trends. For example, right now there are so much funding going into sustainability, going into healthcare accessibility, lots of different areas like that. And immigrants, for example, yeah, you see it in other countries, so you bring that knowledge with you, you're importing that expertise. If you just align your business with those initiatives, the chances of you getting funded increases, and you can actually tap into a lot more resources. So,
go ahead.
I'd just like to add to something. I love the sports analogy, because I'm constantly talking to my daughters who are in both dance and sports. My youngest doing volleyball now, and I always talk about, if you want to get better, hang out with people that are better than you. And and I think that's true in entrepreneurship. I'm no expert on entrepreneurship, but I think just by getting in places and spaces where you are with successful entrepreneurs, and you go back to unsuccessful bids on government contracts, for example. Well, part of that is going to be government is unfortunately pretty risk averse, and so if you're able to establish relationships with a company that is winning those contracts, where you can provide a certain nugget that adds value to their offering, then that's one way perhaps to piggyback on a bid. And then ultimately you've got that experience, you've got one or two contracts under your belt, then you're in a better position probably to go it alone. Just a thought.
I think that's really smart. So, if you feel like they don't want to invest in you or procure something from you because of the risk associated with your business, find a larger or a more established connection that you can partner with to sell to the government. I think that's a great tip.
For no.
And be ready for no. I think this comes back to a little bit of the line that everyone is saying here. It's kind of a thread that I'm noticing, that if you see failure, it's okay to fail. That's part of the sport here. But then to identify what's happening and how you can minimize it the next time that you come up to bat, if I might use a sports analogy. Trevor, so I want to make sure that I want to leave some time for questions. You guys are fantastic, by the way. I could talk to you for a long time. I want to leave some time for questions. So kind of think about what you want to ask folks here, because they have all four of them have this deep-seated knowledge on how to run things. They've been advising entrepreneurs. They're surrounded by entrepreneurs. But I want to talk about some sort of positive things and some tips that you can walk away with. So Trevor, I'm going to start with you. So the Mississauga Board of Trade plays this really vital role in providing in supporting the entrepreneurial community. Could you share some specific initiatives that the board has developed to foster inclusion and support for immigrant and BIPOC entrepreneurs?
Sure. So again, we do find the most success through partnerships. So many times organizations specific to particular communities or industries will approach us to partner on, let's say, a skills development grant that they're applying for, and see Mississauga Board of Trade as a delivery partner for that. So one that's underway right now is a program called Be Ready. It started in Brampton. It's the Brampton Venture Zone, which is Toronto Metropolitan University's outfit there, and they are expanding that program, which assists newcomers to really find positions in areas of their training experience, et cetera. It's not just about entrepreneurship. And so that's where we do find success is in those partnerships. We've done similar activities in something that Mississauga is very well known for in life sciences, and working with our, again, large pharmaceuticals, et cetera, but trying to kind of bring these together. And then through our programming, through events like this, panels, et cetera, we try to ensure that there's representation, not only from diverse community, but size of business, et cetera. So, when we held a session on AI, it wasn't just about the big players. It was how can we practically address this, and in a way that isn't just kind of going along with the trend, but really understanding where does it fit, where does it not, et cetera. So, we don't have specific programs sliced up by particular member segments or representation, but we try to ensure that we're representative, I think.
And this program, it's BREADY.
Yeah,
yes, I've heard about it. Yeah, I've heard about it. It's actually quite
and,
impressive. Yeah.
And other programs similar to we'll engage with. Yeah.
Thank you. Faizan, I'll come to you. I have actually sort of two sets of questions. First, I want to get you to talk about tips for people in the room, and then I also want you to talk very briefly to policymakers, right? So my first question for you is, you have this incredible experience working with international markets. What's your advice to the entrepreneurs in this room here for how they can, they already have ideas, some of them have started working on it, but what to think about to when they go to scaling their businesses?
Thanks. So if your business or if your idea is predicated on expectation of getting a government grant or somebody else's money to start, you should already stop. That's the first tip, right? If you're not willing to write a check yourself or invest your time initially, or bootstrap just a little bit, I think there needs to be some reflection on why you got into this in the first place. This is brutal advice, but I think you have to be honest with yourself. That's the first thing that you must do. And then in terms of grants and other things in VC capital or angel investment, look, it's a competitive sport. You've got to make 20 tries to get maybe one through the door, maybe 100, maybe 200. So don't give up, right? If your idea is good enough, if it's adding the right kind of value, you have to demonstrate that value. You have to make sure that you are discoverable. The number one thing that I'm having to sort of identify here is when I talk to local startups, they're not discoverable because they think that they are putting out content just within their own circles. If they started from a university incubator, they're only present there. If they started as part of somebody's outreach program, they're only working with that partner. And
so they're not sending out the message to a larger...
They aren't.
How do you do that? How does a company in here...
Right. I think we have to look at our American counterparts, right? Even before the product is ready, the marketing is already out the door, right? So the truth is somewhere in between. I think we have to put it out there.
And I'll just quickly challenge you on you saying this idea that people need to invest their own money. I look at my own story. My parents were immigrants, refugees to this country. They just did not have that kind of money, right? So in a way, they do need grants.
Right.
They do need angel investors.
So I think money has to be looked at in two ways. Your time is also money, and it's a component of value. You have to first invest that. At least bring it to a stage where the idea is defined, that you have something on the table, as opposed to waiting and thinking that, you know what, I want to be an entrepreneur. Somebody else will provide the idea. Somebody else will provide the grant. And then I will get together and use my time to put the two together to launch something successful. I think that's what I'm trying to share to avoid.
That you have to put something on the table. And it could be your time, your expertise, maybe your knowledge about a global market.
Yeah.
Interesting. Gerard, we have to talk about the role of media here. We're both in media, right? Isolated crowd these days. And I'm going to come back to talk about policy with all of you in a bit, but I want to start with you. People always approach me. I know that when both of us head out, people are going to approach us to say, can you share my story about my business, or can you talk about how hard it is to do this in this city, or tell the story of what my product does. Talk to me about the role that media can play in shining a light on immigrant and BIPOC entrepreneurs.
Sure, that's a good and big question. So obviously, as you know, and as media plays a crucial role in shaping the public perception, in bringing things to the attention of the public. And when we look at Canadian mainstream media in this case, it doesn't reflect the diversity of the country. Still, in regards to entrepreneurship, I mean, mostly BIPOC or immigrant entrepreneurship stories are not covered widely, or there's in some cases there's a focus on 1 or 2 stars just to check a box that Trevor mentioned as well. But there's a fact that in amongst immigrant or BIPOC entrepreneurship, a lot of the business owners or the entrepreneurs are not big tech startups or companies. They are the printing shop around the corner of the street, or small mom and pop shops, for example, and they do have good stories to tell. So I think we, in playing our role,
we have a responsibility
to push those stories as well to be covered. And sometimes they don't need to be covered by the big, like we aim very high in some cases. We want to be covered on CBC or CTV. Yes, that's great if you can do it. But also being covered by the local newspaper in Mississauga, or maybe a podcast that's popular, that's also good. At least to start with, where you get some kind of visibility, also experience how to talk to media. And in many cases, we also focus a lot on the negative side, where we focus a lot on the challenges of entrepreneurship, immigrant entrepreneurship, I mean. But in most cases, we forget, or maybe we don't pay enough attention to highlighting the positive sides, where the achievements of those businesses, the successes they've had. Maybe they won a small contract. That's an achievement to celebrate. And also the fact that immigrant business owners or BIPOC business owners, they are creating jobs. Not just they are creating companies for themselves, but they are creating jobs for the local community, and that should be told as well in media, whether mainstream or local, regional media, and we should push for that.
And Trevor, you're going to fix the stat. I believe, actually, the Canadian economy, small and medium-sized enterprises play a huge part. Am I right? 98%. 98%. So there, just so you get a sense of, so don't, you might hear the story of Shopify, and you might hear the story of all of these sort of, Wattpad, but actually small and medium-sized businesses do a lot of heavy lifting.
Yep. Yeah. And to a much greater degree than the U.S. The U.S. has many larger companies, which is also why many founders really start with the North American strategy rather than a Canadian strategy. Just a couple of kind of takeaways I had the other day. I had an opportunity to sit down with Carl Rodriguez, the founder of SOTI, one of Mississauga's great technology stories. And I think one message that he really wanted to convey is really be true to your roots, to your value, to your mission. Because as you grow the company, you'll experience external pressures that try to push you in various directions. One thing that he's very proud of, and it's not for everybody, is that he hasn't taken any venture capital. He wanted to maintain that sense of control and ownership over sort of the path forward. What he did say was that a time came when they were starting to get noticed, and they were working with groups like Gartner, if anyone in IT understand that. But it got to a point, he said, when it really started to take them off their mission, where they were receiving all this external pressure, and it became more about feeding the beast sort of thing, hey, we got to move you up a level in terms of your Gartner status. And that's when he came back to his team and said, you know what, we're not doing this anymore. We're going back to our fundamentals. This is what our customers want. And everybody thought he was crazy, but it turned out to be a good strategy. So.
And on that note, I'm going to take just a pause here. I think I'm going to take some questions from the audience. In the meantime, what I'm going to get our panelists here to think about is, as you know, there's been a lot of ink spilled on this idea of on Canada's lagging productivity. It is the thing everyone's talking about this year. And what has been presented is that the innovation economy and all of these people starting businesses could potentially help us solve this. So I want to come back to all of you when we end this session, after we take some questions, on what you think we can do to kind of spur productivity, with keeping who's in the room in mind and keeping the innovation economy in mind and small and medium-sized businesses in mind. So I'll let you ruminate on that, but I'm going to take a minute here and ask you for your questions. I mean, you've got people here who have helped companies find investment, who've invested themselves, who can talk about procurement, who can talk about taking 6 weeks to fill out forms for grants, starting their own businesses. Do you have any questions for any of them here?
We covered it all.
You covered it all. Okay, and you can also share a story that you're experiencing as well. So I'll start with you and then come back to you. Go ahead.
As a grant writer, thank you for the honesty. Grants are not the first step for every business, so thank you. Zach, you said entrepreneurship is a sport. Learn to play the game. Expand on that, please.
Thank you for that question. Yes, so any sport has its own set of rules, even though they might all use a ball. If I walk into a middle of a basketball court and play volleyball, other people will notice, right? So a lot of times, folks that are on the stage here, we've seen thousands of presentations. I've literally seen thousands of pitch decks as part of my job to do due diligence on those. So if a founder comes up and shares a story or does something, really quickly I can tell if they're playing the game, it just gives me so much information, and this is what I wanted to share. If you want to play the sport well, become really good at receiving information. Because so many times I've seen someone try and pitch their business to me, and I try to share if I might be a customer, but they're not paying attention. They're not even ready to accept money. So, but they're thinking in their mind, oh, I need investment, or telling me why I should buy their product and not listening to how it could help me solve the problem I have. That's really what it comes down to. And if we listen better, people are right there giving us their information, they're willing to share, and you would know if someone really wants your product because they're going to start telling you more, right?
And it might only be a small change you need to make to really start resonating, right?
Does that help, Deb? Yeah. Okay. We had a question back there too. Perhaps if you can share your name, if you have a business, please state your business too. I can. Yeah. Could we get a mic too? Yeah. We want to hear you and your name as well, and if you have a business as well. Might as well pitch it here, right?
All right, thank you. My name is Jamal. I'm founder of Stellar Consultancy. So it's business advisory support services for founders that are looking to raise capital, and we work end-to-end where we actually connect them with investors. So keeping this in mind, my question is that what sort of organizations or associations are here in Canada which allow you the access to capital partners, where if we can sign up or join up, we can have access to those in-pocket capital partners, so that I, as a facilitator, can potentially work with founders and connect those founders. Because given my systems, I talk to close to around 100 founders every single month. And the biggest challenge is access to capital. While we are developing those relationships, I would love to have your thoughts if there are any associations that I personally can become a part of.
So who and where are the networks and the associations?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Faizan, I'm going to start with you and then yeah.
Look, it depends on what kind of financing you're looking to raise. I would start with angel networks, right? They're publicly available, discoverable, and they make small to medium-sized checks. If that's what you're looking for, I think that's the fastest route to money as opposed to institutional capital. Then you have institutional capital that takes time, because for you to become a referee to them, first you need to get vetted, and your credentials will need to get vetted. And then it's a process. And then who you put in the pipeline through your referral network will again need to get vetted. So that's a pretty tall order in terms of the time it takes. So qualified angel networks are perhaps your best bet to refer these entrepreneurs, because I'm guessing or assuming that there are smaller ticket sizes if they're just starting off. So, a lot of Canadian VCs work with deal scouts. And that's an overlooked area, right? So instead of thinking that you're going to become a financial player and partner, it might be another path to look at becoming a deal scout to institutions. So you identify the deals to them. When you bring enough and they see value in it, they may come to you to also become a partner where they use you as a distribution mechanism for financing.
Great, and I think we had, oh my gosh, now we have tons of questions. Okay, we'll take one question over there. And your name, and if you have a business, please talk about it as well.
My name is Tapas Bakchi, ex-banker, and I run a wealth management practice. So coming into this network, I worked with small business owners for a long, long time. So coming back to the reality, we can talk about small, macro level, micro level. If there is 100 people here, entrepreneur, they will have the access to information. The major roadblock I came to Canada in 2007. So the major roadblock, whether it is bureaucracy, whether it is red tape, Canada Startup Association, if the people wants to get to this website, they should know where they can access capital. 99% of here, they will say they have workflow capital issue. Every business owner, whether it is 50 grand, whether it is 100 grand, whether it is 200 grand. Nobody, no banks, no 6 major banks will give them the access to capital. They will tell, put 70, put 80, then we'll give 20. How do a business immigrant who comes from other parts of the country, who does not know any ABCD of the macro, how this country works? You have seen most of I'm seeing lately, people with a net worth of a good amount of money, they are not going to any startup association. They are going to franchisee owners, because they know they will be hand-holded and they will get the money from the day one. Whether it is Pizza, McDonald's, Tim Hortons, if someone bring 500,000 to this country, they are not looking for any other ways, because there is no information, there is no hand-holding, every the rate operation, no is access to the capital, no information.
This is, yeah. I hear your question, and I do think that this is something that is stifling new ideas and innovation. Thank you, and I appreciate that you took a minute to rant about that. Would you like to comment on this?
Happy to do that. Thank you. I really appreciate your question and your passion. This is why rooms like these are so powerful and so important, because we hear each other. You have no idea who's sitting behind you or who you're going to run into in the hallway. And that's how those relationships are formed. Capital, whether you're in Canada or in the United States or Europe or anywhere else, it's a network game. You got to find your allies. There are so many. I've had founder friends of mine, immigrant from Nigeria, who came here, built his payment company, went through small check sizes that he could get. Out of the same investors that he got in the first round, one of those investors helped him with the next round and the next round after that until he got bought out. So sometimes it's not a question of quantity. Sometimes you have the people all around you in your network. For sure you know people in your network. But then it's about cultivating those relationships. It's about understanding their best interest. If somebody's going to give $1, they need to show somebody else that $1 is going to become 2 or 3 or 4 or 10. So a lot of times founders don't tell their story in that sense. The numbers have to tell the same story, as your team, as your company. So when you start to put those together, people can see it as a great investment. But if it's a lot of risk, that's why the banking system, we have probably one of the best banking systems in the world, but it comes with a lot of regulations and red tape, and it hurts our startups. So you have to, and I don't want to take too much time, but you have to find your allies, and you have to continue speaking up. So thank you for sharing that, and those doors will appear.
And I think a ton of people that are, I would say, kind of, key players in the innovation economy recognize that this is happening. That people are bringing money in and they're putting it towards real estate or more. And I don't think we can solve it here, but I think you have a really, really valid point. And if I could get both of you to possibly connect after, because I think you brought up a really valid point, and I think there needs to be a bigger discussion, and it's potentially something that you can lay at the feet of these two folks here to say, it's not just workshops, perhaps there's advocacy needed here, right? So thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Now, I was going to ask you all about productivity, but we don't have the time for that. And that's like, I don't want to...
We might need a few days for that.
We're going to need a few days for that. But I just want to say, my gosh, what a fantastic panel. Can we please give them a hand? You guys have been great. I've tried to, it's like, I feel like I'm a sheepdog trying to keep the information when I know that you all have so much to say, but I really appreciate you being here. And I think we're going to have, if I could please invite both of you up here. We'd like to get a photo with the entire panel. Do we stand up? Okay. Or do we stand up? Yeah, we should stand up.
We can all stand.
Yeah, yeah.